Hey kings and queens, welcome back to my channel. It's me, your girl Nicole. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. And if you're new, make sure you go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Today is episode 6 of my Raw Vegan series, and today's a little different because I'm interviewing Lisa Holt, who is a former Raw Vegan and a former fitness competitor. And she did her fitness competitions eating a raw food diet. So I want to get in her head and find out about her experience and her story. So also, she's my trainer. I just started working with her. We do Zoom workouts. She trains me on Zoom. She created a fitness plan for me. I only work with her a couple times a month, but the other days I'm on my own, doing the plan that she wrote for me. She made it knee friendly because I can't do a lot of squats and lunges because of my knees, but she's really good. You guys should check her out. Send her a message on Instagram if you're interested in getting a trainer. She has really good prices, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's bring on Lisa. Hey, Lisa. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello. You look cute.
I clean myself up sometimes.
How are you?
Not always in workout gear.
I know, right? Wait a minute. I didn't even trip off of that. I mean, the fact that you look cute, but I didn't even think, like, wow, she's not in workout clothes.
Yeah. Like, that's the story of my life. So when I can actually put regular clothes on and put myself together, I'm like, yeah.
I love it. That's hecka funny. Lisa, this is a little different from the previous interviews I've been doing because everyone's currently fully raw. But I brought you on here because I want to hear about your story. You used to be raw and now you're not. You used to compete as a fully raw vegan. So I really just want to get in your head and find out all the juicy stuff. So first, let's start off with, I know you're plant-based currently. How long have you been plant-based overall? And then how long did you eat fully raw?
So let's see. I started eating plant-based in 2001. So 19 years total. Wow. Plant-based. Okay. I started eating raw in 2004 through about 2 years ago. There were periods of time in there where I wasn't eating raw, but overall, I'd say I was probably eating raw about 10 years. So now I just eat high raw plant-based, but not strictly raw.
Okay. So, when you were eating plant-based, you started off in 2001 eating plant-based, then you switched to raw back then. What made you switch to eating a fully raw diet?
So, I went to, at the time I was living in San Francisco, and there was it was called the World Vegetarian Society Festival, something like that. And I thought this would be a great thing to go to. So I went. And there was a little booth that it just had some brochures about eating raw. And I had never even heard of eating raw, nothing.
Right.
So I grabbed the brochure, and you have your little bag that you put all your little brochures and samples when you go to any kind of festival. And so I got home and I read the brochure and I thought, this sounds really interesting. And my personality is just, if something's different, I'm willing to try it just because it's out of the ordinary. And literally that was my only initial reason for doing it, was because it was different. And I was like, wow, this is a cool idea, and it's simple. And I didn't have, back then there was no YouTube, there was no social media. So there was literally all I had was this brochure, and I think eventually maybe I ordered some books, that was it. There was no YouTubers to go to, so I kept it pretty simple. And eventually I was like, wow, I feel pretty good doing this. And I I really, like I said, didn't do it for any reason. Then it was something different. And then I had some people that I was working with at the time. They were like, Lisa, you look like you're losing weight. And I was like, really? Like, I mean, I didn't have any intention of losing any weight. I didn't even, wasn't even a thought process. And they're like, you're looking really good. And I thought, well, I feel good and I look good. All right, I'm just going to stick with it. And that's how it started.
Oh, that was a pretty simple reason. I love it.
Yeah.
Were you a fitness competitor at that time when you started eating raw?
No, I was not.
So you're competing, you were already raw when you started competing.
Yeah. So I actually didn't start getting into fitness until 2008. And it was after going through a breakup. And at the time, I just felt like I needed to do something for myself and to really boost my confidence and a little bit of like, I'll show you kind of thing to my ex.
In your face.
Right. Like you're going to see what you missed out on kind of thing. So literally it was the end of 2008. I hired a trainer that happened to train at a gym that was like a couple blocks from where I was living at the time. And for, again, another one of those things that was on a whim. And I thought, I'm just going to see what I'm capable of, see what, get fit. And yeah, so that was 4 years after I started eating raw. So
wow.
Initially I wasn't even into fitness. I mean, a little bit here and there, but nothing consistent, I wasn't going to the gym or anything like that. I did a little yoga during that time. Because I started doing Bikram in, I want to say like 2002, somewhere in there. So I was doing Bikram, but I wasn't doing much, in terms of what I started doing in 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that changes my mindset, because I was thinking you were already competing. So you already had the physique and then you maintained it with your raw food diet, but you started your physique and competing on a raw food diet. So that makes it even better. Like, wow, because, most people that are competing the standard American way, high protein, some greens, they're no carbs or low carbs. They have this very strict diet. So you were, oh, wow, that just makes me like, I'm in awe now, because you got me all messed up now.
Well, and it was a little tricky because I don't know if I told you this, but I initially was doing it raw and I didn't really know, I was not in the competing world, so I didn't know all of the preconceptions of what you were supposed to do. But I had my trainer, who was very traditional, didn't really agree with me doing it the way I was doing it.
Oh, okay.
But he supported, well, I can't even say he supported, I was a client,
Right.
so he kind of tolerated it basically.
Right.
But he would kind of nudge me and say like, you could do better if you would eat this way, and I didn't, after a little bit of time, I didn't really feel like he had my best interest in terms of health and nutrition.
Yeah.
But I also went into it with an open mind. So there was one show where I decided to eat plant-based, but not raw. And so I did kind of do an experiment doing it that way. But it didn't, I think that was my second show that I did. I did just eating plant-based, and I didn't notice a difference in terms of my physique that much. Not enough to make that decision to change the way I was doing things permanently. So yeah, I did try it both ways.
Okay. So you were able to develop those muscles by eating raw. So tell me about how your diet looked. Now, I know your trainer wasn't supportive. He wanted you to eat turkey burgers and greens, not or seitan or tofu and greens. But you were like, no, I'm going to stick to my raw. This is what's up for me. You know, this is working for me. So how were you eating? What was your, I know it's different every day, but like, what was your style of eating to get yourself ready for the competitions?
So one thing that happened is once I made the decision that I felt like my trainer didn't have my health in the best interest, I reached out to another coach who was more focused on prepping for shows in a healthy way that allowed you to compete and then exit the competition in a healthy way. Because I don't know if you know, but when you compete, especially as a female, it can be very hard on your body. It can, you know, mess with hormones, your metabolism, all those things can get out of whack. And a lot of times the conventional coaches don't care as much about that. They just care about getting you to the stage and placing. And so I was fortunate that very early on, I was introduced to my coach. His name is Kevin Miles, and he's amazing. He doesn't even advocate a specific diet. He advocates whatever you're doing, we will adapt it to make it work the best that it can possibly work for your body.
Right.
And I was really drawn to that. So I started working with him, and it worked pretty well. So I was able to, he would give me kind of a range to fall into calorically. And I would just track my macros in an app called Chronometer. And I would just try to keep them balanced and do it in a way that it stayed consistent, so that I would eat the most calories possible to still see the improvement over the course of my prep.
Okay. And what did that look like? Give me a sample day.
I have to think back.
I know it was a long time ago.
I ate a lot. I would say this: I ate a lot of greens, a lot of salads to give myself the most volume. So what I would do is I would have fruit based around my workout. So, for instance, a typical day would be either something like a 4-banana smoothie with some greens. And then I would, and then there were a couple shows, I kind of digress a little bit. There were a couple shows where I played around with using raw plant-based protein powders as well. So some of my preps, I would add that into my smoothies, because I thought, you know, maybe there's something to this, you know, extra protein and muscle development. So I did do a lot of experimenting. So breakfast would usually be like a banana smoothie, and then lunch, which would be post-workout, because I pretty much always did my workouts in the mornings. And I would eat usually maybe 4 meals, and I would kind of distribute my calories over those 4 meals pretty evenly. And then I would have a fruit meal for my second meal. Usually it would be pineapple, because I love pineapple. So it would be pineapple or papaya. But I chose, the difference of when I prepped for a show and when I was not prepping for a show is that I tried to eat fruit that was very easily digested for my system, and that was watery, juicy fruit and not dense fruit. Like, for instance, I kept things like dates and things like that to a minimum during prep, because I find that for my body, I didn't do my best on denser fruit. So second meal would be fruit. Third and fourth meal, I would taper off on the fruit. I would still have some, but I would taper it. So the first meal was the highest amount of fruit, and then I would start to taper it. And then my fourth meal would be my meal that would be usually a big salad, or something like cucumber noodles. And then I'd have my fat source in that last meal. So that would satiate me and take me through through the night.
Okay. So sounds bountiful. So
yeah, I never felt hungry.
That's good.
Well, I shouldn't say I never felt hungry, but I never felt deprived during prep. Whereas in comparison to a lot of my friends who are competitors, and none of them ate the way I did, they would, they'd be cranky, they'd be starving. There'd be all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
And they would look at me and be like, why are you eating fruit? Why are you eating bananas? Like, that's not what you should be eating. And I would get, a lot of comments, and not in a negative way, but in a way of going like, is that gonna work? And I remember, even some top coaches, looking at me going like, I've never seen this kind of approach, but okay. And to be honest, I never did well enough to go to pro level. But I was able to do decent enough that I was happy. And who's to say that if I ate, the traditional way, would I have gotten better results? I can't say that, but it was more important to me to focus on my health and my well-being than to do it a certain way to get a trophy,
and then die, and then end up in a hospital from malnutrition afterwards. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. It's like, to be honest, there's a lot of issues that competitors go through, mostly women, because it's such a strenuous process. And if you don't approach it in a healthy way, your body gets out of whack. And I have so many girls that I've known throughout the years of competing that they either end up with eating disorders or metabolic damage, hormone issues. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I made a decision early on that no matter what, I wasn't willing to do what it took if it meant that I was going to do irreversible damage to my body.
That's very smart. You have to health first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ultimately, it was a hobby. So, why kill yourself? It's supposed to be a hobby.
So like, what is the basic amount of calories that a regular non-raw vegan would eat versus how, like, I feel like they have to eat a certain amount of calories. They're like, it's very restrictive versus what you ate. Did you have to restrict your calories as well?
So I would, towards the end of prep, so maybe like the last couple of weeks going into a show, we would lower my calories, but we wouldn't lower them. They would still be higher than what the average competitor was doing. So for instance, we would only lower my calories anywhere from 150 to 200 calories less than what I was eating, and then up my caloric burn. So we were trying to keep it where I was taking in as much calories as possible and still getting results. Mm-hmm. And my coach used to say something like, I'm trying to remember exactly how he would put it, but basically he would say, imagine you're not running a race to get to the finish in 16 weeks. He's like, right. You're just humming along, and maybe you get there in 16 weeks. Maybe it takes you, 30 weeks to get there. And this is just your journey along the way. Whereas most coaches approach it from the perspective of, you got to get there at that 16-week mark, whatever it takes. So there would be, girls that would, and it varied because every coach had somewhat of a different approach, but I mean, I remember girls that would cut calories down to, like 1,000 calories a
Whew.
day. And that's keeping in mind, they're also doing anywhere from 2 to 3 sessions of cardio a day on
Wow.
1,000 calories. So, I didn't go anywhere near that. So my first show with my original coach, he did have me pretty low at one point to almost 1,000 calories. And that's when I said, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't think this is right. And that's when I sought a different approach and
Yeah.
ended up with the coach I work with now, because I knew in my body that wasn't right. And there's so many girls out there that they don't know. All they know is I do what my coach tells me to do.
Right.
And, it can really be a lot on the body. And with that said, I never did the hours and hours of cardio either, because that was also part of, keeping the metabolism healthy. Because if you're doing, 3 hours of cardio a day on 1,000 calories, your body, it goes into a place that you don't want it to go once you start coming out of the show and you start actually, because your brain can only be that quote unquote strong for so long. And then I saw people just gorge on food, once that period is over. And so that was, oh yes, like crazy binges. And even my husband would watch it, backstage, and he was like, wow. So
They're eating Snickers and Baby Ruths and
oh yeah, donuts was the big thing. Donuts was the big thing. People would just show up with just big boxes of donuts and just go to town.
And then they gain all that weight back in a week.
Oh yeah. You would see a competitor from stage to like 2 weeks later look like a completely different person.
Wow.
Like completely, like people, it was nothing for people to gain like 20 pounds in a matter of 2 weeks.
Dang.
And it definitely taught me a lot.
And all that work goes down the drain.
Yep.
That's
because
too
the
much.
intention is, a lot of the girls think that, oh, I'm going to get to this place and then I'm going to stay there and I'm going to do everything it takes to stay there. But they don't take into account that willpower will only take you so far. So when the show is over and there's no goal, your mind can't sustain that. And the willpower is gone, and you lose control basically.
Wow, that's crazy. You didn't really experience that because you ate, you had a bountiful diet. It was, what's the word I'm looking for? Variety. You weren't just like, chicken and spinach for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right. Yeah, I always felt pretty good. I mean, it was normal towards the end of your prep, usually like the last 2 weeks, you're gonna be tired. You're gonna be just feeling a lot of emotions because it is a tough process, when you're so focused on your training and so focused on your nutrition. It sends you into like a hyper focus because you have to. And so even with, eating a balanced diet and eating a bountiful amount of calories, yeah, I still would be tired and worn down by the end, but I wouldn't have the swing that a lot of girls would have. It's like my coach would say, as far as you swing the pendulum one way, it's going to swing back the other way. So our goal was that my pendulum would just swing a little bit. So then when the show is over, I would just swing very slightly, because it wasn't pulled way up to swing way back the other way. So at the end of shows, I usually would over time my weight difference would be about 6 to 8 pounds, which was a good healthy range. So I was very happy with that.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not competing anymore, right?
I'm not. And I'll say this,
Uh-oh, you got stuck.
I wouldn't say again because is it good?
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay. I try to never say that I'll never do a show again, because it's something that once you do shows, it's in your blood, you know. And I feel very happy and content with the amount of shows that I've done. And at this point in time, I don't feel drawn to do another show. But, you know, who knows if, you know, there may be a time where I say, you know, I want to do a show. But for me, it's this period of time in my life is more focused on my relationship with my husband, my family, my coaching. And when you compete, you really have to be in a mind frame that there's a certain amount of energy and time that has to be put towards that. And it has to be conscious. And whoever is part of your circle is part of that process. And so for me, I made a decision that, you know, I don't want to take my husband through that process with me at this stage in my life, you know. So I'm very happy with what I'm doing in the moment and the goals that I have. And it just happens to not include competing.
Right. It was for a season, and who knows, you know, maybe again in the future, but right now is not that season.
Exactly.
You know? So what made you go back to eating cooked foods? You were pretty much fully raw then. What made you switch back to regular plant-based?
So about 4 years ago, to the date, actually, I had a hysterectomy, and I'd had issues with my cycle for many years, and finally decided I thought that diet and working out would eliminate those issues over time, and ultimately it didn't. And so, and I had uterine fibroids, and I thought that eating raw would eventually, you know, shrink the fibroids, and the issues always persisted. So 4 years ago, I decided to just go ahead and get a hysterectomy. And then after doing that, one of the reasons that I ate all raw up until that point was also because I found that eating a lower fat diet was beneficial for me when I would have my cycle. So it would keep the symptoms less of an issue. Yeah. And so once I had the hysterectomy, my hormones kind of changed, my needs changed, and I thought, you know, I feel like I want to add some different things to my diet that I felt like I couldn't before. And I talked with my husband, and ironically, he was in the same boat because he also was eating all raw as well. And he had been eating all raw for prior to us meeting, which we met at the Woodstock Fruit Festival. So it was, I think he ate 6 years. And so we were in the same place where we were wanting to expand, and we both felt like there was a part of us that felt like this label was somewhat of something keeping us from expanding our diet in certain ways. And we also both felt like I was personally having hair loss, and
oh really?
Yeah, my hair was getting really thin. So when I would wash my hair, I just clumps of hair, just an alarming amount of hair. And I was like, and I would on and off wear extensions. And so there was a point where I was like, well, I may be wearing extensions for the rest of my life.
Oh no.
You know? And so between just a lot of hair loss, and my nails were very brittle and thin.
Hmm.
And I ultimately didn't feel my best, but I couldn't for sure say if that was related to me eating raw or if
Mm-hmm.
it had to do with I had recently had a hysterectomy, which
Yeah.
can affect different things. And
Your
so,
hormones.
yeah, and so I decided to experiment. And that was a choice that I felt like was beneficial for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I still, my goal is always to focus on health. So
Yes.
it wasn't like, oh, I want to eat like, I don't know, potato chips or whatever. It was more just incorporating things like sweet potatoes
Yeah.
and cooked beans
Mm-hmm.
and still keeping it whole food, plant based.
Yes.
And and I felt like that was more important to me than focusing on, oh, I'm eating all raw.
Right.
And I still have a high regard for eating all raw, and there are still stages where I do eat all raw because
Yeah.
ultimately I do feel very light and energized when eating all raw, and so I try to keep my diet high raw, but I also, there is some parts of me that feels like it doesn't necessarily suit everyone for a lifetime.
Right.
I think that eating raw is very beneficial, especially for seasons of time. And that season
Mm-hmm.
could be, it could be a couple of months, it could be a couple of years, or it could be, how long that period of time is. I think is very beneficial, especially if someone has health issues
Yeah.
or you need to reset yourself and
Mm-hmm.
get yourself eating healthier again. But ultimately I just felt like releasing that label
Yeah.
allowed me to not put so much pressure on myself just to say I'm 100%
Yeah.
right. you
Yes.
know
I understand. I get it. And that's it's been a dream of mine to be fully raw, but I find that it's not realistic for me. Like you said, like there's times and seasons where I do it. I might do it. I've done it for 42 days. I've done it for 30. I've done it for 21, and I feel great. But I always find that I can't continue to do it. Like I can't do it long. I mean, I can. I'm pretty sure if I really put my mind to it. But I find that it's a good balance for me when I'm high raw because I'm still, feeling great and I'm eating clean and I'm able to have my cooked foods, you know what I mean? But the high raw, I still think it has some great benefits. But I do the fully raw sometimes where if I'm having some inflammation, some pain or something is not right, I'll go raw and it actually makes it better,
yeah
but I think the good balance for me is high raw, where I eat a lot of raw, but I also have my cooked foods too. You know what I
right.
mean?
And
Um,
another aspect of that, this shouldn't hold too much weight in my opinion, but it factors in, is that socially, when it comes to family and friends, I felt like, especially when my husband and I both were eating all raw, it it created somewhat of an isolation. And
mm-hmm.
not to say that it was a bad thing, because it wasn't a bad thing. And we were both very strong in how we eat. We still are. My family, we live somewhat near my family, and so they respect how we eat.
Yeah.
But it's more relatable to people socially, when they can understand a little bit of, I feel like a lot of people can understand that if you eat whole food plant based versus you don't eat anything cooked,
Right. Right.
and like I said, that shouldn't hold a lot of weight, because if someone's doing it for reasons of insecurity or not confident with how they eat, that shouldn't be the
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
But I have found that since we have incorporated cooked foods in our diet, we're able to influence people to eat healthier because it doesn't feel as unattainable. And to
Right.
me, that speaks higher. If I can if I can influence my family in a way that they can relate and it helps them to eat a little healthier, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's more realistic for them to get with versus, well, I'm just going to have fruit all day and then a salad at night.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My family does not.
There's
I'm
nothing.
in the South. They don't relate to that at all.
Yeah.
It's like that's you and your husband's thing.
A lot of people can't get with that. I mean, it feels amazing,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's just not realistic for some people and they just can't understand. But I'm going to ask one more question because I want to be mindful of the time. I told you we would do, um, can you give me a typical day of, I know every day is different. How about this? Tell me what you ate yesterday. Wait, yesterday was the day after Thanksgiving. No, what's yesterday? Yeah. Tell me what you ate. Give me a sample day of when you ate, good and clean.
Okay. Well, I mean, in all honesty, Thanksgiving was not really that much different than how we normally eat.
That's good.
The main difference, actually, it's kind of funny. The main difference of how we ate on Thanksgiving is that I spent a little more time in the kitchen than normal. So, let's see. I guess, yeah, I can take you through Thanksgiving Day because that's more memorable. So that morning I had a bowl of oatmeal, and all it was is just oat. I cooked some oats and add some cinnamon and stevia, and pretty simple,
Yeah.
and boring to most people, but makes me happy. So that was my breakfast. And then my husband grows sugarcane. One whole side of our house is sugarcane. So he presses sugarcane juice this time of year every day. So I had two 40-ounce jars of sugarcane juice. And that was pretty much lunch.
Wow,
And
interesting.
yeah. And then we ate dinner around 4 for Thanksgiving, and I made a lentil loaf, which was basically lentils with some vegetables, and which was really good. It was my first time making. So we had lentil loaf, some vegetables, steamed vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and green beans, and and sweet potatoes, cubed sweet potatoes with cinnamon.
I saw your dinner on the dinner on Instagram. I was all look at
yeah.
nice size portions.
Yeah, and then the special thing that we never do really. It was my first time making an actual pie. Like I've made plenty of raw pies. That was easy enough for me, but this was a cooked pie. And literally I made it with an almond meal crust, and some cashew. I made some cashew cream cheese and sliced apples on top, and baked it. And
that sounds yummy.
That was our dessert, and that was us splurging, so we still, even though we eat cooked foods, it's still very much focused on how does this make me feel and how does this affect my health, because my husband has a failed spinal fusion. So for him, even though we have different reasons, for both of us, it's very important that we eat healthy, because I have digestive issues. So it's really key for us to eat what our body can utilize in a very efficient way. Otherwise, you end up like the standard American that, is unhealthy, immobile, and miserable, know?
I just want to ask you, do you ever eat junk food? And then I want you to tell everybody your social media handles. And I'll also put it in the description box below, you guys, so you can follow her and subscribe. Wait, you don't have a YouTube channel.
I do, but I haven't posted on it in a number of years.
A million years. But she is all over YouTube, which is how I found her a couple of years ago. there's several interviews that she's done, and that's how I found her. But do you ever eat junk food? And then you could tell us your social media handles. Junk food as in like, you know, maybe some chips, maybe some vegan cakes or vegan ice cream or things like, do you ever eat any of that stuff?
So to be honest, I never eat what is considered vegan junk food, but we eat what we consider our junk food, which to most people is not considered junk food. So
what, like a protein bar?
Right. It's like the pie that I made. It was more ingredients than what like I normally like to have in a meal. Mm-hmm. So I still, you know, I don't eat anything fried or like potato chips or anything like that. Granted, I use an air fryer here and there, but that's a whole different thing because I don't even use oil with that. Yeah. So to answer your question, no, I don't eat junk food.
That is so good. All the people I've been interviewing, nobody eats junk food. I'm just like, that's a dream of mine too.
Well, here's the key.
I love junk food.
Here's the key. You have to find what those things are. Like, for instance, whatever that junk food is that you are drawn to, mm-hmm. you find what you can substitute for that. So like for us, like jackfruit is like our treat to ourselves. You know, if we're feeling like we want something and we're craving something, we go buy a jackfruit and it's like sweet little candy, you know? So it's like over time you find, I know.
That is not junk food.
I don't know what to tell you. Basically, my point is you find over time what can feed that part of you and still feel healthy and vibrant at the same time.
Yeah.
So for us, mangoes, you know, like very quick story. Our wedding day, he thought that we were gonna spend the whole day together and then we're getting married in the evening. And as a female, I was like, I gotta spend the whole day getting myself together. And so our wedding was around 5, and around 3:00 he calls me and asks where I am, and I said I'm on my way. And he's like, well, where have you been all day? And he was upset. He was bummed out because he spent the whole day, you know, by himself. And I said, well, I was getting ready for our wedding. And long story short, I got to him, and because I could tell he was really like bummed out, I got some mangoes, cut up some mangoes, got him to take a bath, and I brought him a plate of mangoes. And he ate those mangoes like they were just the most delicate thing, and it changed his whole mood and made him super happy. Aww. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like once you can find what triggers that for you, you won't feel drawn as much, I guess, to junk food.
Yeah. Those mangoes were his chocolate cake.
Exactly.
All right, tell us your social media handles.
So mainly I'm on Instagram. That's where I mainly post and get into my direct messages. And it's effortless living. Tongue-tied. Effortless Living Lisa. That's the main place that I post.
Okay, cool. You guys make sure you follow her. Well, as I mentioned in my intro, she is my trainer. I've been working with her for a few weeks, and she wrote me a exercise plan. Do you do food plans too?
Not anymore. Okay. Not anymore.
Okay. Because I was like, how come you didn't give me no food plan? I'm just playing. But you guys check her out, you know, if you're interested in trying to get your shape, you know, get your body back in sorts and you need an exercise plan, hit her up on Instagram and send her an inbox. She does reply. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lisa. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is great. And I'll see you on Thursday for our training session. Don't kill me. Well, that concludes my interview with Lisa Holt. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As I mentioned, I found her on YouTube some years ago. She's been interviewed by so many people. I just think it's so intriguing that someone was able to be a fitness competitor eating a raw vegan diet. So I needed to talk to her about this. She is my trainer, as I mentioned. You know, we work out a couple of times a week, a couple of times a month, excuse me. And then the other days I do my own workout on my own that she wrote for me. Yeah, she's great. You guys should hit her up. You know, I hope you guys got a lot of useful information and you're able to take home some good knowledge. Anyway, continue to watch my videos. Please like, please share my videos. You know, I want to reach people. I want people to know who I am. Okay. I'm all about health. I'm all about, you know, I'm not perfect. You know, I eat junk food sometimes and everything. I'm working on that. But, you know, overall, I'm all about health and putting things that are good inside my body that are going to help me thrive. Anyway, I want to reach people. I want to share with the world. So spread the love. And thank you again. And I'll see you guys in the next video.